Manila, Philippines. October 9th, 1971. Pacific International Sports Hall. 8:26 in the evening. 5,000 people were already on their feet when Marcus Kane hit the local heavyweight for the fourth time. The first punch broke the man's guard. The second folded him at the waist. The third dropped him to one knee. The fourth came after the referee had stepped between them. The crowd stopped cheering. Marcus Kane stood in the center of the ring with both fists wrapped in black tape. He was 6'6", 320 pounds, and undefeated in 41 bare-knuckle fights. His nose had been broken so many times that it leaned to the left. Old scars crossed his ribs, shoulder, and chin. His arms looked too heavy for an ordinary man to carry. The crowd called him the Butcher. Kane looked down at the injured heavyweight and laughed. "Next time," he said, "send me someone who belongs here." Two attendants pulled the fighter toward the ropes. The referee pushed Kane toward a neutral corner. Kane did not move. He stared at the crowd instead. A few minutes earlier, the building had admired him. Now the front rows were booing. That angered him more than any punch. The announcer entered the ring with a microphone. "Ladies and gentlemen, that concludes the heavyweight challenge." Kane took the microphone from his hand. "No," he said. "It concludes when I say it concludes." The promoter climbed onto the apron. "We agreed on one controlled exhibition." Kane looked at the man being carried away. "He lost control," the crowd shouted. Kane turned slowly beneath the white ring lights. He had already done enough to prove that he was dangerous. That was no longer enough for him. He wanted the building to fear him again. "Is this the best Manila has?" he asked. The boos became louder. Kane smiled. He understood hatred. Hatred still placed him at the center of the room. He leaned over the ropes and looked at the first rows. Fighters sat near ringside in uniforms, jackets and team colors. A boxer had already stood. Two soldiers were shouting. A karate instructor raised one hand and demanded a chance. Kane ignored all of them. Those men looked ready. Beating them would prove strength. Kane wanted humiliation. Kane had not chosen the stranger by accident. He saw several men near ringside who looked stronger. One boxer had already removed his jacket. A karate champion was arguing with the promoter. Two soldiers were shouting that they would enter. Kane ignored them. Those men looked prepared. Defeating them might prove that he was dangerous, but it would not erase the anger in the crowd. The quiet man offered something better. He looked ordinary. He looked unprotected. He looked like someone Kane could frighten before the bell and crush after it. That was the performance Kane wanted. He wanted the crowd to laugh with him again. He wanted them to watch a small stranger step into the ring, understand the mistake, and become afraid. He did not know that the stranger had been studying him from the first fight. Bruce had watched the way Kane loaded the right hand. He had watched the left heel rise before every charge. He had watched the giant's breathing stop when anger took over. He had watched Kane strike after the referee entered because one clean hook had wounded his pride. Kane believed he was selecting a body. Bruce understood that Kane was revealing a mind. His eyes moved past the large bodies and stopped on a smaller man sitting quietly between two local martial arts teachers. The man wore a black shirt and dark trousers. No uniform, no belt, no gloves, no group of students around him. He was not shouting. He was not trying to be noticed. Kane pointed. "That one." The crowd did not understand. Kane pointed again. "The little man in black." People in the first row turned. The small man looked up. Kane smiled. "Yes. You." Laughter spread through the arena. The man remained seated. Kane held one finger in the air. "1 minute." The announcer carried a second microphone toward the front row. Kane continued. "Come into this ring and stay on your feet for 60 seconds. The man beside the stranger leaned close and said something. Kane could not hear it. He did not need to. He believed the answer would be fear. "I have already fought the heavyweights," Kane said. "Now let us give the crowd something funny." More people laughed. The small man stood. The people nearest the stranger did not laugh anymore. One of the local instructors had recognized him the moment he entered the hall. Another knew the name but had never seen him move. Both men understood that the calm in his face was not confusion. "You do not have to answer him," one said. Bruce kept his eyes on Kane. "I know. He wants a victim." Bruce stood fully upright. Then he should have chosen more carefully. The instructor looked toward the ring. He is more than twice your weight, Bruce answered without looking away. That is his fact. It does not have to become mine. There was no anger in the words, no effort to sound brave. Bruce did not rise because the crowd had laughed. He did not rise because Kane had insulted him. He rose because Kane had turned the exhibition into a threat and had chosen someone he believed would be helpless. The distinction mattered. A man answering humiliation can become controlled by the person insulting him. Bruce was not answering the insult. He was accepting the test. Around him, recognition moved through the lower rows in fragments. A hand pointed. A reporter leaned forward. Two young martial artists stood on their chairs. Kane saw the reaction and smiled. He believed fame had made the small man important. He still did not understand that the reaction was a warning. The laughter weakened. He removed a black jacket from the back of his chair, folded it once, and handed it to the instructor beside him. Kane watched. The man did not ask a question. He did not look toward the exit. He stepped into the aisle and began walking toward the ring. Something changed in the lower rows. Several martial artists stopped smiling. A television cameraman turned away from Kane and aimed toward the aisle. The promoter's face tightened. Kane noticed the reactions and misunderstood them. He thought the crowd was excited because he had selected a celebrity. He never considered that they might be trying to warn him. The man reached the ring steps. The announcer met him at the bottom. "Sir, before you enter, may we have your name?" The man looked up at Kane. "Bruce Lee." The reaction began in one section, then another. A group of young students stood. A reporter near the timekeeper leaned toward his partner. Whispers moved around the ring. "That is Bruce Lee, the man from Long Beach, the martial arts teacher." "Kato." Kane heard the name. It meant nothing to him. He bent over the top rope. "Bruce Lee?" Bruce looked up. Kane smiled. "Never heard of you." The name moved through the hall in waves. Some people knew him from television. Some had seen the Long Beach demonstrations described in magazines. A few instructors had heard stories from men who trained with him in California. Most of the crowd still knew nothing. That difference made the moment stronger. Half the arena saw a small stranger walking toward danger. The other half understood that the danger had just selected him. A reporter near the ring stood on his chair and shouted toward the camera crew. "Keep rolling." One of Kane's cornermen leaned through the ropes. "Marcus, maybe ask who he is." Kane did not turn. "I just did. He has a reputation." "So do I." The corner man looked at Bruce, then at the injured heavyweight beside the aisle. "This is not the same," Kane smiled. "It never is after I finish." Bruce stopped at the final step. He looked across the ring without hurry. The ropes, the corners, the referee, the distance between Kane's feet. The giant interpreted the pause as doubt. The experienced fighters nearest the ring interpreted it differently. Bruce was not admiring the danger. He was measuring the room. Kane flexed one hand inside the black tape. The movement made the knuckles crack. Several people in the front row flinched. Bruce did not. The promoter moved toward the steps and lowered his voice. "Mr. Lee, this man is not performing. He has injured 3 people tonight." Bruce looked at the heavyweight being treated. "I saw. He is trying to hurt you." "I saw that too." "Then why enter?" Bruce looked back at Kane. "Because he believes the answer was decided when he pointed." The promoter had no reply. Inside the ring, Kane spread both arms and turned toward the crowd. "You wanted a show," he shouted. "Now you have one." Bruce climbed the final step. He did not look at the audience. He did not raise his hands. He did not answer the shout. That calm disturbed Kane more than fear would have. Fear confirmed his size. Calm questioned it. By the time Bruce reached the ropes, the laughter had nearly disappeared. The crowd had not seen a punch. Nothing physical had happened. Yet the story had already changed. The giant still believed he had chosen a victim. The room was beginning to understand that the choice might belong to someone else. No one in the hall could see the next minute clearly. But for the first time that evening, the uncertainty no longer belonged to the smaller man. It had crossed the ring and settled behind Kane's eyes. Bruce climbed the steps. Kane sat on the middle rope and held it open with one arm. "Come in, little actor." Bruce ignored the opening and entered through another side. The crowd reacted. The choice was small. Kane felt it as a refusal. Bruce stood inside the ring. The size difference looked impossible. Kane was nearly a foot taller and more than twice his weight. His shoulders blocked part of the overhead light. One of his wrapped fists looked almost as large as Bruce's head. Kane walked forward. "You still have time to sit down," Bruce answered quietly. "You chose me." Kane spread his arms. "Yes. Then do not complain about the result." The first rows heard it. The sentence moved through the arena. Kane's smile disappeared. The referee stepped between them. "This is a controlled exhibition. 1 minute. I stop at the moment either man is in danger." Kane looked at the referee. "You will not need the full minute." Bruce said nothing. The promoter entered the ring. This challenge was not scheduled. Kane pointed toward Bruce. He came willingly. The promoter turned. "Mr. Lee, you do not owe anyone this." Bruce looked toward the injured heavyweight being treated beside the aisle. Then he looked at Kane. "I know. You can still leave." Bruce met Kane's eyes. "I have been watching him all night." Kane laughed. "You think watching is fighting?" "No," Bruce said, "but it tells me how you fight." The officials spent nearly 2 minutes trying to prevent the challenge. The promoter reminded Kane that the agreement allowed controlled contact only. Kane pointed toward Bruce and asked whether the small man needed protection before the fight had even started. Bruce did not react. The referee checked Kane's black hand wraps. He pressed each knuckle and found no hidden weight. Then he looked at Bruce's bare hands. "Do you want tape?" "No." "Gloves?" "No." Kane laughed. "Good. I want him to feel it." Bruce looked at the referee. "He will." The first rows reacted. Kane stepped forward, but the referee held him back. While the rules were repeated, Bruce watched the giant breathe. Kane inhaled through the nose when calm and through the mouth when angry. The right shoulder rose before the power hand. The left foot turned outward before a forward drive. His weight settled heavily over the front leg whenever he expected the other man to retreat. Kane watched Bruce's chest and face. Bruce watched the whole body. That difference was already shaping the fight. Kane planned to overwhelm whatever stood in front of him. Bruce planned to use whatever Kane gave away. The referee raised one hand. Kane rolled his shoulders. Bruce tested the canvas beneath his feet. The crowd leaned forward. The bell rang. Kane charged. No jab, no careful opening. He wanted the first punch to end the story. His right hand came over the top with enough force to knock a man unconscious through his guard. Bruce moved left. The fist passed beside his head. Kane turned and threw the left. Bruce was already outside it. Kane swung again. Bruce slipped beneath the arm. 3 punches. 3 misses. The crowd exploded. Kane stopped and looked at him. Bruce touched the front thigh with a short side kick. Not full power. A measurement. Kane looked down. Then he laughed. "That is your weapon?" Bruce said nothing. Kane advanced more slowly. He spread his feet and used his size to cut off the ring. Bruce moved toward the ropes. 1 step, then another. The crowd became nervous. Kane heard it. No place to run. He rushed. Bruce moved at the last instant. Kane's shoulder struck the ropes. The entire ring shook. Bruce kicked the same thigh again. Harder. Kane turned. The smile was gone. Kane did not charge again immediately. He had expected panic after the first rush. Instead, the smaller man had made him collide with empty space and had already struck the same leg twice. The giant raised his hands and began testing the distance with shorter movements. A small jab toward the chest. A step across the open side. A feint with the shoulder. Bruce answered with inches. A half step. A turn of the hip. A quiet shift that forced Kane to carry 320 pounds through another unnecessary movement. Kane jabbed again and drove the right hand toward the body. The punch grazed Bruce's ribs. The crowd gasped. Kane smiled. He had finally touched him. The smile lasted less than a second. Bruce answered with a straight hand to the center of the chest. The strike did not move Kane far, but it interrupted his breath. Before the giant could recover, Bruce kicked the front thigh again. Kane's legs stiffened. He reached with both hands. Bruce moved under one arm and struck the body from the side. Kane turned and caught only air. The audience began to understand the problem. Kane needed one clean moment. Bruce was making him pay for every attempt to create it. 10 seconds. The timekeeper called it. Kane raised both hands and shortened his punches. A straight right drove toward Bruce's chest. Bruce redirected it. The left hook followed. Bruce ducked. Kane's fist struck the top rope. He reached with both arms. His hands caught Bruce's black shirt. The arena gasped. Kane pulled Bruce against him. For 1 second, Bruce disappeared against the giant chest. Kane lifted him completely from the floor. The crowd screamed. Kane carried him toward the corner. This is what real fighting feels like. Bruce struck twice beneath the ribs. The movements were so short that many spectators did not see them. Kane's body reacted anyway. His grip loosened. Bruce dropped to the canvas. Before Kane could close again, Bruce drove one shoulder into the center of his chest and turned. Kane stumbled backward. 2 full steps. The crowd rose. Nobody had moved Kane all evening. Kane looked surprised. Bruce looked calm. 20 seconds. At 23 seconds, Kane stopped trying to hit Bruce's head. He stepped wider and began using his body like a moving wall. One shoulder blocked the left side. His lead foot cut off the right. He forced Bruce toward the ropes without throwing a single punch. The crowd stood. This was the danger Kane's size created. Bruce could avoid a fist. He could not make the ring larger. Kane rushed once the escape disappeared. His forearm caught Bruce across the shoulder and drove him into the ropes. The top rope bent behind Bruce's back. Kane grabbed the shirt and pulled him forward. A short punch struck the body. Bruce turned enough to reduce the impact, but not enough to avoid it completely. For the first time, the giant had landed something real. "There," Kane said. "Now you understand." Bruce touched his ribs once. Then he looked at Kane's feet. Almost all the giant's weight rested on the damaged front leg. Bruce struck beneath the ribs. Kane tightened his grip. Bruce struck again. The grip changed. Bruce dropped his weight, turned beneath the arm, and kicked behind the loaded knee. Kane's base shifted. Bruce stepped away from the ropes. The giant crashed into them chest first. The ropes threw him back toward the center. Bruce met him with a palm to the jaw. Kane stumbled. The crowd's roar changed. Bruce had not escaped by overpowering the grip. He had escaped by waiting until Kane believed the grip had already won. Kane's breathing had already changed. He rushed again. Bruce met him with a stop kick to the hip. Kane's forward movement died. Bruce followed with a straight punch to the chest, then another kick to the front leg. Kane answered with a hook. Bruce leaned away. The fist passed by inches. Kane's momentum carried him too far. Bruce struck the body. 1, 2, 3. Kane roared and swung backward. Bruce was gone. The crowd began counting. 25, 26, 27. Kane turned in the center of the ring. Bruce stood 8 feet away. The giant had promised the challenge would not last 10 seconds. Now every second was being announced by 5,000 people. Kane lowered his head and attacked. This time he did not punch first. He tried to crush Bruce against the corner with his entire body. Bruce stepped aside. Kane adjusted in time and caught him with one forearm across the shoulder. The impact drove Bruce into the ropes. The crowd gasped. Kane grabbed the back of Bruce's shirt. He pulled him forward and drove a short punch toward the body. Bruce blocked most of it. Not all. The strike moved him sideways. For the first time, Kane smiled again. "There." Bruce touched his ribs. Kane came forward. "Now you understand." Bruce looked at the front leg. The next kick landed exactly where the first two had landed. Kane's knee dipped. Bruce struck the body, then the chest, then moved away. Kane had already thrown more power in 30 seconds than some heavyweights used in an entire round. His shoulders were beginning to rise with every breath. Sweat moved down the scar on his chest. Bruce had forced him to carry his own weight through every miss, and the crowd could finally see the cost. The giant was still capable of ending the challenge with one clean strike. But the certainty had disappeared. He was no longer hunting a victim. He was trying to solve a man he had judged too quickly. 30 seconds, half the minute. The first 30 seconds had changed the question inside the arena. At the beginning, people wondered whether Bruce could survive. Now they wondered how long Kane could keep carrying his own anger. The giant's shoulders rose with each breath. Sweat ran down the scar across his chest. Every missed punch forced him to stop, turn, and move the full weight again. Bruce remained close enough to keep the danger real. He did not run around the outside of the ring. He stood near the edge of Kane's range, where one mistake could still end the challenge. Kane feinted the right hand and stepped across Bruce's lead foot. For a moment, the trap worked. Bruce could not move left. The ropes blocked the rear. Kane drove a short left hook toward the body. Bruce lowered the elbow and absorbed part of it. The force moved him. The crowd shouted. Kane threw the right. Bruce slipped inside the shoulder rather than away from it. At that distance, the giant could not unfold the punch. Bruce struck the ribs twice and stepped out before Kane's arms could close. Kane turned. Bruce was already in front of him again. The exchange had lasted less than 2 seconds. It taught Kane nothing. It taught the experienced fighters in the crowd everything. Bruce was not simply faster. He was choosing where the fight existed. Kane looked toward the timekeeper. Bruce saw it. "You asked for 1 minute." Kane's face hardened. He charged with both arms wide. Bruce did not retreat. He stepped forward. His forearm struck Kane's biceps. His palm hit the jaw. His foot hooked behind Kane's front ankle. Kane's balance shifted. The giant dropped to one knee. For 1 second, nobody reacted because nobody understood what they had seen. Kane's knee rested on the canvas. Bruce's hands were still relaxed. The giant had not slipped. He had not tripped over the ropes. The smallest man in the ring had taken his balance at the exact moment Kane believed he was strongest. Then the meaning reached the upper rows. Men stood. Women covered their mouths. A group of young fighters began shouting Bruce's name before the referee could move. The arena went silent. Marcus Kane looked up. Bruce stood directly in front of him. No smile, no raised fists, no celebration. Kane had never been knocked down, not in 41 fights, not in training, not in public. He rose so quickly that the referee stepped back. The crowd erupted. Kane wiped his mouth. There was blood on his hand. "You think that means something?" Bruce answered. "It means you can fall." Kane attacked with real anger. The next punch was not controlled. It was meant to injure. Bruce moved outside the right hand and struck the ribs. Kane kept coming. Bruce kicked the damaged thigh. Kane's leg weakened. He switched stance. Bruce kicked the other leg. Kane tried to trap him against the corner. Bruce slipped free. Kane swung. Bruce ducked. Kane swung again. Bruce entered, hit the body, and turned away. The champion was no longer following a plan. He was chasing a man. Every miss made him slower. Every cheer for Bruce made him more reckless. 40 seconds. Kane breathed through his mouth. Bruce's breathing remained controlled. Kane stepped back. For the first time, he stopped chasing. He planted both feet in the center and raised his hands. The arena became quieter. This was the best decision he had made all night. He forced Bruce to approach. Bruce circled once. Kane watched carefully. The right elbow protected the body now. The front foot stayed flatter. The giant had finally abandoned the performance and returned to fighting. Bruce saw the improvement. He also saw how late it had come. The front leg was damaged. The breath was shorter. The right hand had lost speed. Bruce stepped into range. Kane fired a compact left hook. Bruce blocked, but the force moved him sideways. Kane followed with the right. Bruce slipped. The punch grazed his shoulder and drove him toward the corner. The crowd exploded. Kane attacked again. For 2 seconds, he looked like the undefeated champion his record promised. Bruce's back neared the ropes. Kane raised both hands to trap him. Bruce stepped forward instead of away. A strike hit the body. Another hit the chest. Kane's elbows dropped. Bruce turned outside the shoulder. The corner was empty when Kane crashed into it. The crowd understood. Kane's best moment had lasted 2 seconds. Bruce had used it to make him spend everything that remained. 47 seconds. At 47 seconds, Kane understood that time had become another opponent. The crowd had begun shouting Bruce's name. Not everyone knew who he was when he entered the ring. Now 5,000 people knew. Each repetition made Kane more desperate. He had promised 10 seconds. He had promised fear. He had promised that the smallest man in the building would become a joke. Instead, the crowd was counting the final moments of his certainty. Kane pushed away from the corner and forced his damaged legs to move. His manager shouted for him to stop chasing. The referee shouted for controlled contact. Kane ignored both voices. Bruce watched the left heel lift. He watched the shoulder turn. He watched the breath stop. Everything Kane had shown during the earlier fight appeared again in one desperate preparation. The giant believed the final attack carried his entire reputation. Bruce saw only a familiar line. He waited. The last 10 seconds began. Kane pushed away from the corner and slapped his own jaw. "Come on!" Bruce remained still. "Hit me! You wanted to prove I could not survive." Kane slapped his jaw again. "Hit me!" Bruce shook his head. "That is not the same thing." Kane laughed without humor. "You are afraid to stand in front of me." Bruce moved closer. 3 feet, then 2. The arena became silent. Kane smiled. He threw the right hand from close range. Bruce intercepted it. His left struck Kane's forearm. His right hit the center of the chest. A low kick landed behind the knee. Kane turned. Bruce followed with a straight punch beneath the chin. Kane staggered into the ropes. The crowd erupted. 50 seconds. Kane pushed forward. The referee shouted a warning. Kane heard nothing. He lowered his head and rushed. He wanted to crush Bruce against the opposite corner. Bruce stepped aside. Kane's shoulder hit the post. The ropes shook. Bruce struck the body twice. Kane turned and wrapped both arms around Bruce's waist. The grip closed. The crowd screamed. Kane lifted him again, this time higher. He carried Bruce toward the ropes. He intended to throw him out the same way he had thrown the judo champion earlier. Bruce struck one open palm against the ear. Kane's head turned. Bruce hooked one leg inside Kane's knee and shifted his weight. The giant lost balance. Both men fell. Kane hit the canvas first. Bruce rolled free. The impact shook the ring. 56 seconds. Kane tried to rise. The front leg failed. He caught the rope. Bruce stood 10 feet away. The referee looked toward the timekeeper. Kane pulled himself upright. 58. He raised both hands. Bruce stepped forward. Kane threw one final punch. Slow, heavy. Everything he had left. Bruce slipped outside. His fist struck Kane's body. A second hit the chest. A third landed clean against the jaw. The bell rang. Kane remained standing for 1 second. Then his legs stopped holding him. 320 pounds fell backward onto the canvas. The sound reached the upper seats. The arena exploded. The referee rushed between them. Bruce stopped immediately. He did not follow Kane down. He did not raise his arms. He did not shout. He stood and watched the man breathe. The timekeeper struck the bell again. Kane had promised the small stranger would not survive 10 seconds. Kane had lasted 60. The referee began counting. 1, 2. Kane opened his eyes. 3. He rolled to one side. 4. He tried to push himself up. 5. His arm failed. 6. The referee stopped. The challenge was over. For several seconds after the stoppage, the ring filled with officials and cornermen. Nobody touched Bruce. He had already stepped away. Kane's team expected anger when the giant opened his eyes. What they saw was confusion. He looked toward the ropes, then toward the first row, as if trying to find the exact place where the evening had changed direction. There was no single place. The defeat had been built from choices. The extra strike after the referee entered. The demand for another opponent. The search for the smallest body. The laughter. The promise of 10 seconds. Each choice had felt like control. Together they had carried him to the canvas. Bruce stood near the opposite ropes. He was breathing harder now. A red mark crossed his ribs where Kane's punch had landed. The black shirt was stretched at one shoulder from the 2 lifts. He had not escaped untouched. That mattered. The victory did not come from pretending size meant nothing. Kane's strength had created danger in every exchange. One clean strike could have changed the story. Bruce won because he saw the danger clearly without allowing it to become fear. 5,000 people shouted Bruce Lee's name. Kane lay on his back staring into the lights. He had always understood crowds. When they cheered, he believed they admired him. When they booed, he believed they feared him. This sound was different. They were celebrating the end of his certainty. Kane's manager climbed through the ropes. "Stay down." Kane pushed him away and sat up. Blood marked his lower lip. Bruce stepped closer. The arena became quiet. Everyone expected a victory speech. Bruce said only 4 words. "You chose me." Kane breathed hard. Bruce added one sentence. "Do not blame the result." Then he turned toward the ropes. Kane watched him go. The same small man he had selected because he looked harmless. The same stranger whose name had meant nothing to him. The same man he believed would return the crowd to fear. Kane rose slowly. His front legs shook. He picked up the microphone from the canvas. The arena waited. He could blame the rules. He could demand another minute. He could say he slipped. He could call the final punch lucky. Kane looked toward the first row. The empty chair where Bruce had been sitting was visible beneath the lights. "I chose the smallest man I could see," Kane said. The crowd became silent. "I thought that meant I chose the easiest." He lowered the microphone. No excuse, no speech, only the first honest sentence of the night. Bruce returned to his seat. The instructor handed back his jacket. "You said you were not fighting tonight." Bruce put it on. "I was not planning to." "What changed?" Bruce looked toward Kane. "He chose." The program stopped for several minutes. Reporters surrounded the ring. Photographers climbed onto chairs. The television crew replayed the fall. The promoter argued with officials. Kane sat in his corner while a doctor checked the front leg and jaw. "Nothing broken," the doctor said. Kane looked across the arena. "That is not where it hurts." At 9:11, the announcer asked Bruce to give the demonstration he had originally come to give. Bruce stood once more and entered the ring. The crowd applauded. He waited until the sound faded. "I was invited to talk about speed." He looked toward Kane. "Speed is not moving fast. It is arriving before the other man understands what he has already given you." The crowd listened. "Power is not size. Power is the whole body becoming one action at the right moment." He raised one hand. "And fighting is not proving that you are the strongest person in the room." He looked toward the men Kane had defeated. "It is seeing clearly before fear, anger, and pride make you blind." The speech lasted less than 3 minutes. Bruce bowed and left. Kane watched from the tunnel. When the crowd had gone, Kane returned to the empty ring. The bright lights were off. One lamp still burned above the canvas. He walked to the center. He stood where he had pointed into the audience. Then he looked toward the first row. Bruce's chair was empty. Kane raised one hand and repeated the gesture. He remembered how easy the choice had felt. The small body, the plain clothes, no belt, no visible fear. Kane lowered his hand. That was the moment he understood where the defeat had begun. Not at the final punch. Not when his knee touched the canvas. Not when Bruce escaped the first grip. The defeat began when Kane believed he could recognize danger by looking at size. Outside the sports hall, the crowd carried the moment into the streets. Taxi drivers argued about the final combination. Young fighters copied Bruce's work beside food stalls. Older instructors discussed the repeated attack on Kane's front leg. Nobody agreed on every technical detail, but everyone remembered the same image. The giant pointing with complete confidence and the smaller man rising without anger. That was why the story spread. It began with a mistake anyone could understand. The newspapers disagreed about several details. One report said Kane fell at 59 seconds. Another claimed the bell sounded before the last punch. A third described Bruce as a mysterious stranger whom nobody in Manila recognized. The photographs were harder to argue with. One showed Kane pointing into the first row. One showed Bruce walking alone through the aisle. One showed the giant on one knee. The final image showed him on his back. Those 4 pictures told the story without explanation. The first photograph became the one people remembered most. Not the knockout, not the celebration, the choice. Kane's arm extended, his finger aimed at the smallest man he could find, his face certain that appearance had already answered the question. That image traveled farther than the technical details because anyone could understand it. A powerful man had searched for weakness. He believed he had found it. The next minute exposed the difference between looking harmless and being helpless. When fighters discussed the bout months later, they did not begin with Bruce's final punch. They began with Kane's finger. They began with the laugh. They began with the 2 words that had placed everything in motion. That one. The largest headline read, "The butcher chose the wrong man." The fight footage spread through martial arts schools across Asia. Some watched the final 3 punches. Others studied the low kicks. Experienced fighters watched the moment Kane's balance changed. But most people remembered the beginning. The giant searched the crowd for the easiest target. He ignored the heavyweights. He ignored the champions. He ignored the men wearing uniforms and belts. He selected the smallest man he could see. The three men Kane had defeated remembered the challenge in different ways. The boxer remembered Bruce refusing to meet force with force. The judo champion remembered the turn near the ropes. The local heavyweight remembered the moment Kane looked toward the clock. Each had entered believing the giant's size was the central problem. Bruce had treated size as one fact among many. The body was large. The habits were visible. The anger was predictable. The balance could be taken. Once those facts were separated, the monster became a man. 6 weeks later, Kane fought again in Singapore. His opponent was smaller than him. The old Kane would have laughed. This time he bowed. He won in the second round. When the referee stepped in, Kane stopped immediately. A reporter asked what had changed. Kane looked at him. "I started watching before I started proving." "Who taught you that?" Kane walked away. He never became gentle. He never stopped being dangerous. But he no longer believed that fear was respect. Years later, a young fighter asked him about Manila. Was Bruce Lee really that fast? Yes. Was he really strong? Yes. Could you have beaten him if the fight continued? Kane was silent. Then he looked at the empty ring. No. Why? Kane tapped one finger against his temple. He saw the fight before I did. Manila, Philippines. October 9th, 1971. Pacific International Sports Hall. 5,000 people watched Marcus the Butcher. Kane searched the first row for the weakest man in the building. He saw a small stranger in a black shirt. He pointed. He laughed. He offered him 1 minute. Marcus Kane believed he had chosen an easy victim. 60 seconds later, he understood the truth. He had not chosen Bruce Lee. He had chosen his first defeat.